I think there's going to be a lot of intergenerational conflict. I don't know the outcome of it.
What?
But it could be money printing at the end of the day, right? Because it's a very easy way for the government to solve this problem. The boomers have stocks to sell. Does anyone want these stocks? Maybe to some extent. Do they want that big suburban house or whatever they have, or apartment in the city? I don't know. So I think there's going to be a massive issue in terms of if the younger generation wants to buy things that the older generation is selling, and they need to sell those things to fund their retirement. How does that square? Are they going to increase taxes because the asset prices of things the boomers own and went down and they can't afford their retirement? Are the young going to accept that? I don't know.
It's a great privilege to have Arthur Hayes on the show, CIO of Maelstrom, co-founder of BitMEX, inventor of Perpetual Futures, a widely used instrument all across exchanges in the world. Arthur, it's great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Bonnie Chang is my co-host for the show. Bonnie, why don't you take it away?
I'm so excited to have you here. Oh my goodness. Okay, first question is about Taiwanese dollar. Our banker couldn't explain why Taiwanese dollar jumped 10% in a couple days compared to USD. Can you?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting. I don't know, won't go too deep into it, but essentially there were some interesting articles written in the FT by, I think, Brad Setzer and another economist, basically documenting how Taiwan life insurers are probably some of the richest institutions in the world who've been investing abroad. And essentially, Taiwan is obviously a big global manufacturing hub, semiconductors and all that. But the government and the central bank has a policy of keeping the Taiwan dollar very, very weak. And so to do that, they have to create Taiwan dollar local liquidity, which obviously is the reason why apartments are so expensive in Taipei and other cities. And they accumulate dollars, but they don't want to look bad like currency manipulators to the United States government. So they take all these dollars and they funnel them to the Taiwanese life insurers. And then these life insurers go and they buy bonds and enter in all sorts of structured derivatives with large banks. Essentially, they have a lot of US Treasury bond exposure. And also, a lot of hedge funds like to fund themselves in Taiwan dollar because of this persistent weakness that is encouraged by the government. And then they engage in massive carry trades. And so what happened in the first week of May is that there was this fear that, oh my God, what if the Taiwanese lifers start going out of the treasury market, taking that money and repatriating into the Taiwan dollar? And basically, a lot of these hedge funds exited their carry trades and got stopped out. And that's why you saw the 6 or 7% move in the Taiwan dollar. And I think that the authorities didn't want to step in and create more money in Taiwan to basically reverse those flows, because they wanted to show to the Trump team when they're negotiating that, hey, we're not about to let our currency continue to weaken. We accept that we're going to have to allow the Taiwan dollar to strengthen. And I think that's why you had this sort of massive move in the Taiwan dollar. And I expect it to continue to strengthen over time.
Do you think that's going to happen in other Asian countries?
Yes, and it already started. You saw it in South Korea. You see it to some extent in Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand. Any of these countries that run these persistent programs of currency weakness, accumulation of dollars in their reserve account and investing abroad, that money's coming back.
And you said there is capital control in U.S. coming.
Yes.
On foreign investment ownership.
So I think they're going to start by taking away the withholding tax exemption. There's already talk of that happening where, foreigners don't pay the 30% tax that Americans do, getting interest on their bonds. So they're going to remove that. And so it's going to mean that, hey, maybe this treasury bond isn't so attractive and I'm not going to own that. I'll own something else. So I think that's going to start happening.
Does that mean a market crash?
No, because they'll print the money to make sure that all the foreigners who leave, they'll replace that with printed money.
Well, actually, on that note, in early April, you saw bonds go down with stocks, Bitcoin, yield went down as well, yield went up. So I wonder if capital controls are going to recreate that kind of scenario where all asset classes go down slightly and basically we'll have less liquidity in the US system.
I think that it'll be rolled in slowly over time. And so you're not going to see this knee-jerk reaction. I think the Trump administration learned that these sorts of massive sort of changes are going to create outcomes that they don't like, which is heightened bond market volatility, things going the wrong way. And so if capital controls are going to be phased in over time, they know that they need to replace that buying. Either it's the Fed, it's the Treasury, it's the banking system, it's some other private sector actor that is allowed to create credit very cheaply and therefore replace these foreigners who will be forced to sell these assets.
Stocks have re-correlated with the 10-year yield, and so has Bitcoin. Do you see that correlation holding between these three classes?
No, I think that there will be some risk off events, and we'll see bond market volatility heighten, I think Bitcoin will sort of assert itself as a hedge against this.
You once said, buy everything, Chai America lives. And then you talk about their breakup. Are they getting married or are they breaking up?
I think they're going to break up over time, but
Okay.
it's not going to be as quick as some people think.
Which is?
Could be decades.
Oh, I see. Okay, so tell me more about what happens if foreign money leaves, like to the global system. What does that look like?
Well, if foreign money went into the U.S. because the U.S. markets have been the best performing, whether it's stocks, bonds, or real estate. And if that money is leaving and it's going to go back into their local markets, then the U.S. markets don't do so well. And maybe it's better to own Taiwanese stocks or Indonesian stocks or Thai stocks or all these other emerging market countries who are basically going to say, okay, we're forced to repatriate this money back on shore. Our currencies appreciate. Our consumer gets wealthier because now they can purchase more things, and maybe people want to build business domestically to service that economy.
And the stablecoin bill, is that a way to force issuers to buy more T-bills?
I don't think so. I think it's a way to allow banks to engage in the same sort of trade that Tether does. And so if I'm a bank and now I can create my own stablecoin, I essentially can onboard deposits at zero cost. And then if they remove the supplemental leverage ratio exemption, I can buy a T-bill and I get to capture 100% of that income.
I've heard this argument from one of the exchange owners. He said other countries should not really try that hard anymore because US has already won this crypto or Bitcoin war because the underlying asset or how people purchase Bitcoin is with USDT, and that's USD.
I don't think so. I mean, the biggest revenue generating market in the world for crypto is Korean traders. So I'm not exactly sure America's won anything. It's just another player in the game.
Oh my God, I want to ask about Korean market now because that's the degen stuff.
Have you been hanging out with Do Kwon recently? No, I'm kidding. All right, well, let's move to the Bitcoin market and then we'll pass it back to Bonnie for some macro questions. I just, you talked about this a lot in the press, but just give us a sense of the timeline of Bitcoin to $1 million by 2028. You said 250 by end of the year. Is that still your timeline, or have you changed
so I
things
think
since?
that we get to 250,000 by the end of the year. It'll be bumpy along the way, obviously, but that's sort of my end of year price target. And then $1 million Bitcoin is what I just got off stage talking about how they're going to print, I think, in the realm of $9 trillion-ish between now and that period of time. And that is, Fannie and Freddie, the government support entities that are allowed to create mortgages in the US. Yeah. They will print $5 trillion. You will have probably up to $1 trillion purchased by the banking system due to supplemental leverage ratio exemptions and purchasing things that the foreigners are selling. And I think the banks are going to because they now don't have to hold all this equity capital against their treasury book. Yeah, they can lend more into the real American economy. And so you're going to see the amount of loans going to manufacturing firms increase, which is, again, that's an increase in credit, and that will make its way into crypto as well.
When the Fed printed a limited QE back in 2020, all asset classes went up. It wasn't just Bitcoin. So this is good news for Bitcoin, what you just said, the thesis you laid out, but it could be good news for everything else, including stocks, gold, potentially even bonds as well. Why would Bitcoin in particular outperform everything else in a
So Bitcoin has a fixed supply. It's obviously a much smaller market in terms of market cap. And so if you have a lot of things chasing a very small door, then the price goes up on the margin. And so that's why Bitcoin has been the best performing financial asset in the last 15 years.
One particular risk that you've highlighted is the potential for the next administration to write off the Bitcoin strategic reserve completely. If the Democrats win in the next cycle, 2028, and if they cancel the strategic reserve, would we see a lot of selling pressure? Maybe. It depends on how much Bitcoin is accumulated. It depends on, what the financial pressures are of the government, right? So I think they have 200,000 Bitcoin that they seize from people, the U.S. government that is, and that could be sold. Obviously, if there's a budget pressure, then that's there's money there to sell it, so they can sell it. Yeah, but do you see them buying more Bitcoin? They haven't done that yet. I don't think it's politically palatable to buy Bitcoin and print money. I think if you're going to print money, either it's tax cuts or it's build a bridge or build a hospital, these sorts of things that benefit more people than just a small sector of people who own Bitcoin. Are you disappointed that the Bitcoin strategic reserve will not buy more Bitcoin?
Yeah. Why does it not buy more? Because I heard arguments about them selling some gold and buy Bitcoin.
I mean, they could. Again, anything is possible, but I just think it's bad politics. I think if you create all this money and you could spend it on anything you want, surely spending it on buying Bitcoin is probably not going to be the best way to get votes.
I think a lot of people here would vote for that.
That's not enough.
That's what you wrote about. They already got their votes. They don't need to do that again.
Exactly.
All right.
Oh, I see. Okay, I want to ask you about altcoin season. Everyone's asking, is it coming? And people are saying, hey, this cycle we have so much garbage. And what is happening now?
Well, I mean, I think that all your altcoins, most of them are probably not going to go up in price again because they don't have product market fit. They don't take any revenue and bring it back to the token holders. And so they're like high FDV, low float bullshit VC coins. And so they're not going to do very well. And that's why you've seen like down only for like, Barrett Chain, maybe Modon, whatever launches. So these types of projects, these very hyped, big round, big fundraising round projects, it's going to be very hard for them to go up in price because they don't actually have any clients that spend money. But there are projects that are very good that have, product market fit. People spend money. That money goes from the protocol to the token holders. And I think the small subset of products that do that, they're going to do very well.
Pendle,
EtherFi, yeah, stuff like that.
Okay. What about all the VC coins from the last cycle? They were doing very well. What happened in this cycle?
I think, again, no product market fit. And again, if you have a very high valuation that you need to grow into and you have no clients actually doing anything on your chain or your product, it's very hard to generate that interest after you've seen the price go down.
And I think in one of your interviews, you said Bitcoin dominance will hit 70%. And then that is when we might see the altcoin season coming. Is that the argument?
Still think that's going to happen.
70%.
We're about 65 now.
So still more outperformance in Bitcoin before we're not
in general. I mean, basically,
yet.
Bitcoin dominance is very predicated on ETH. So if ETH doesn't move, then it's very hard for that ratio to really move that.
Will ETH move?
I think so. I think ETH is very hated. People don't like it. And so if I want to bet on something, the change in the cycle, I think ETH could outperform.
How is Maelstrom positioning itself in terms of your allocation priorities right now?
So most of our portfolio is in Bitcoin, a decent slug in ETH, and then we have a lot of term sheet projects. So things that are rolling off because we're advisory and investments, and things that we've bought on liquid, probably EtherFi and Pendle are probably our two large positions.
How often do you rotate in and out of Bitcoin?
Not that often. Maybe make one or two big buying or selling things every year. Because again, I don't want to be trading too much.
Yeah, you don't have like a rebalance mandate.
No. There's no mandates. The mandate is outperform Bitcoin. So if we can invest in a new project and it outperforms the Bitcoin capital that we had to sell to invest, that's good. And then we'll buy more Bitcoin with our profits.
Right. Well, we've talked to a lot of Bitcoin maxis that say that the only way to outperform Bitcoin is to buy more Bitcoin. So in a sense,
Well, I mean, I think that's false because you could obviously there's a time period. Over what time period, right? Solana was at $7 and it went up to 300. If you put all your money in Solana at $7 and sold it all at 300, you definitely outperform Bitcoin over that time period. So,
but long term, I mean, I'm not that smart, to trade that difference. Okay, you're the OG in the exchange game, and I think a lot of centralized exchange, they owe you gratitude because I'd say 90% of their revenue is from perps. Right now, we see DEXs like Hyperliquid coming out. The token is performing great, but there was this incident of the jelly meme coin, and that kind of sparked the argument of if it's actually decentralized, and if centralized exchanges can kill you with $10 million, then is it still safe to use DEXs like that?
Well, I think obviously it's probably less decentralized than they advertised. And it seems like, the people in charge of Hyperliquid decided that they wanted to preserve the buying power of their HLP versus adhering to what the market was saying with the liquidations of this jelly token. So on one hand, yes, it's not very decentralized. On the other hand, it's like, oh, well, I guess they really care about this HLP, which is the backstop for a lot of the markets. So I feel more comfortable trading there. Because at the end of the day, traders don't care about decentralization. They just want liquidity, and they want a nice range of products to trade. So if Hyperliquid offers that in a decentralized way, then fine, let's trade there.
And a lot of centralized exchanges, they're heading towards payment because that's the obvious next step. How do you see this exchange game play out in 10 years?
I mean, I think right now it's a perfectly competitive market. No one has any innovation on products, and everyone charges the same fee. And so it comes down to marketing. It's very difficult to stay in the centralized exchange game, especially if you're in the US, and now you're going to have all the banks offering the same brokerage services. So I think it's going to be very tough for the Coinbases and Krakens of the world to keep their profit margins if JP Morgan is not going to allow their clients to buy Bitcoin.
Speaking of Coinbase, several large exchanges IPO in the last couple of weeks. This sparks a new trend of crypto becoming mainstream in the S&P 500 as well. Coinbase is listed in the S&P 500. So two-part question. I'll ask my first part first. Do you think now all investors investing in the S&P have to be aware and cognizant of the fact that they're indirectly exposed to Bitcoin through any SPX?
I don't think they care, right? A lot of people are just invested in the index. And so they own an ETF, and the ETF owns a lot of stuff, right? That may or may not agree with their particular sensibilities, but they don't care. They just want to be in the index.
With exchanges and centralized exchanges becoming more mainstream, do you see a scenario in which they start siphoning deposits from the regular person from large financial institutions like JP Morgan's and the Bank of America's of the world?
I don't think so, because these banks have better distribution networks than the crypto companies.
So there's no direct competition in the foreseeable future.
Oh, there absolutely is direct competition, right? So if JP Morgan offers the ability to buy Bitcoin and Coinbase does, it's the same Bitcoin that you're buying, right? So then it comes down to really just fees. And so can JP Morgan offer a zero fee trading because they make so much other money in other places around the bank versus Coinbase offering 0% trading? I don't know I'm not an expert on the Coinbase revenue drivers, but I would imagine a lot of their revenue comes from this very high margin brokerage business that they operate. And so if a JP Morgan or a Bank of America says it's zero fee Bitcoin trading, bring your balances here, bring your bank deposits here, well, then what is Coinbase going to do?
Well, okay, so JP Morgan chief Jamie Dimon did say that he's allowing people to buy Bitcoin. He's not going to custody it. If you were to build another BitMEX today, how would you prepare yourself to compete with TradFi entering the crypto space next couple
more
years?
degen. I wouldn't be trying to compete in trading Bitcoin. Okay. That is going to be a loss leading product.
Interesting.
When you say go more degen, what does that mean?
Meme coins, leaning into the launch pad. I think there's some things that people can do to improve sort of the new issue process. So I think there's a lot of more revenue to be earned there than competing on Bitcoin US dollar trading, which is going to be, again, low margin, highly competitive market.
Could you explain what meme coin is to my mom?
Trading culture.
Ooh, I like that. Okay. I think in your chat with Anthony Pompliano, you talk about how older generation, they're wealthy and they're trying to sell their asset to the new generation for their retirement. But the new generation, we are not really buying and storing things. We're paying for experiences. How does that play out?
It's going to be interesting to see how regulations pay out for crypto, right? Or any other types of digital assets, because the boomers have stocks to sell. Does anyone want these stocks? Maybe to some extent. Do they want that big suburban house or whatever they have, or apartment in the city? I don't know. So I think there's going to be a massive issue in terms of if the younger generation wants to buy things that the older generation is selling, and they need to sell those things to fund their retirement. How does that square? Are they going to increase taxes because the asset prices of things the boomers own and went down and they can't afford their retirement? So then they're going to tax the young more to pay for their retirement. And are the young going to accept that? I don't know.
What would you guess?
I think there's going to be a lot of intergenerational conflict. I don't know the outcome of it. But it could be money printing at the end of the day, right? Because it's a very easy way for the government to solve this problem.
Everything leads to money printing.
Basically.
That's the solution of everything.
Does money printing lead to more degen activity usually?
Yes, because again, if you don't have a lot of financial assets and you're watching all this inflation happen all around you, you have to use more leverage in the little bit of savings you have to escape.
Why is there less degen interest now than in 2021?
What interest in what though?
The retail interest in the altcoins, and actually some people track also crypto channel volume, viewership volume. It's significantly lower now than 4 years ago, despite the fact that Bitcoin and many other things have reached new highs.
Again, I think a lot of these coins have not performed very well. They were priced wrong. They were priced too expensive. And then their actual fundamentals, when you actually said, okay, you're launched, the hype is over. Okay, where are the clients? Where's the revenue? Oh, we don't have any.
Yeah.
But this thing is a 5 billion FDV. Well, you can't 10x that. It's just hard. So you go from 5 to 50. It's easy to 10x 100 to 1 billion in terms of on the marginal price basis. So I think it's just the price is too expensive.
Is it too far-fetched to say that Bitcoin has become an institutional instrument now and the retail crowd is just no longer interested in that?
No, I'm sure there's lots of retail interest in Bitcoin. It's been well performing and it's the easiest one to understand.
Okay.
Go ahead. You spent a lot of time in Asia, and I want to know what you learn from Asia when it comes to money and investment that is pretty much different from the US.
Don't trust the government. I don't think any Asians actually trust their government. And so they're a lot more skeptical of things, and they save in different ways. There's obviously gold is big in Asia, property investment, those sorts of things. But I think the mentality is just different.
Is it more degen or is it more conservative?
It depends on who you're asking. I think it's a whole range of people.
Why is Korea trading so much?
So very high internet penetration, very high gaming culture, very ethnically homogenous, and very low opportunity for most individuals to escape, a shitty life. They're very highly educated, but there's no jobs that make any real money in Korea. And so either they're trading stocks or now they're trading crypto. Everyone's trying to get ahead because it's just such a brutal rat race in Korea.
Who has the best party in Asia?
The best parties in Asia. Ooh. I haven't been to Taiwan in a while. I have to say Taipei.
That's the right answer, man.
Well, he's speaking to two Taiwanese people. There's only one right answer.
And he actually goes to the local party, like those that I haven't been to. My God.
Okay, well,
impressive.
I guess we both learned something from Arthur today. I'm going to switch it back to markets for just for one more question here. Open interest in Bitcoin futures reached unprecedented levels recently. I think it was, checking my notes, $80 billion on May 22nd, $15 billion increase in just 5 days. It's highlighting just unprecedented leverage. What does this signal to you?
Just more interest in the space, right? Obviously, we rallied up towards all-time high, and obviously people are opening more leverage positions, thinking that we're going to run past 110 much higher quickly. So I think that's
in your past experience running BitMEX, whenever open interest in futures spikes, what tends to happen next?
I think we want to look for basis expanding. So what's that premium of Bitcoin versus other things? And so I don't think it's anything crazy yet. It's like 10% or something.
Right? Were there any indicators on BitMEX in particular that signaled huge market movement afterward that were pretty consistent, you think?
No, I haven't identified any, but I didn't look that closely. So
cool.
Could you briefly share your inspiration and how you came up with perps?
Basically, me and my co-founders answered all support tickets, and our clients didn't understand futures contracts. They didn't understand why the price was different than spot. They didn't understand why they expired. And so we thought, can we create a product that has no expiry but highly leveraged? And so this was the impetus to create the perpetual swap. And so we tinkered around with it until we found the product that everyone is familiar with and launched it in May 2016. Most people hated it for a while, but then over time they started trading it because this solved a problem for us because it was very time consuming for us to answer the same question over and over again.
And do you trade perps?
No.
Reason?
I don't usually trade on leverage. If I buy anything, I buy it on a spot basis.
And do you encourage people to?
I encourage people who have the time to spend to be good at their craft to trade using leverage. If you don't have the time and you don't have the patience, then don't use leverage.
Okay, so let's say if I were to use perps, what is the first thing I should think of? Is it risk, the position size? What is it?
Have a goal. What is your goal? Like I want to make this percentage, and what's your downside? What's your upside? And when do you cut? When do you add? Like have a plan before you start trading, because then the emotions take over, and then you'll make a mistake.
Final question from me. What's next for Maelstrom? Any new plans? Any new expansion? Any new projects?
So we're actually launching a buyout business. So we are raising investor capital and buying specific crypto businesses with a nod to revamp management, focus on adding different revenue lines, and then taking these companies public, probably via a SPAC in the United States. We've identified one target which we're going to be going out with shortly to raise money and hopefully really increase the bottom line of this business.
Can you give us more detail right now?
Actually, I can't yet, but it'll be very clear shortly when we sign this deal.
Well, without giving too much detail, what types of businesses and what kind of operations are you interested in?
So we're interested in businesses that are highly cash flow positive.
Mm-hmm.
So the one that we're looking at now makes a very good amount of money, high cash flow positivity, and we're getting it at a very decent price relative to EBITDA.
Okay, so it wouldn't be like an angel investing kind of thing.
No, this is not angel investing.
How do you personally pick altcoin? What do you look at?
Narrative. And now it's all about cash flow. So do you generate a lot of cash flows? Is there a way for me as the investor to get paid by supporting you by owning your coin?
And not the valuation.
Well, I mean, early stage stuff, we have caps on how much we'll pay, very specific. But liquid stuff, it's really about cash flows for me.
Don't you feel narrative change too quickly? It's very hard to catch on.
It does, but if you pay the right price, it doesn't matter. If you pay a low enough price, if it launches, most likely you'll make money. But if you pay the high price when you're chasing the narrative and trying to be in every single big deal, then that's when you lose money.
What is your favorite Asian food?
Ooh, my favorite Asian food. I probably have to say prawn mee.
Oh.
What is it?
Prawn mee.
Prawn mee. Oh,
Yes.
okay. Yeah. The Vietnamese.
No, it's Singaporean.
Yeah. Oh, Singapore. Okay.
Yeah.
I need to catch up on my Southeast Asian foods.
Yeah.
David.
On that note, let's go eat some Asian food together sometime, Arthur.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.